Welcome back, everybody. This Week in America, website thisweekinamerica.us. Dan Harris, co-anchor of ABC News Nightline, also co-anchor for the weekend edition of Good Morning America. Before that, he was anchor of the Sunday edition of World News, regularly contributes stories on ABC for shows like 2020, World News with Diane Sawyer, and Good Morning America. And he's the author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, 10% Happier, How I Tamed the Voice in My Head, Reduced Stress Without Losing My Edge, and Found Self-Help That Actually Works, a True Story. Dan Harris, our guest on This Week in America. Dan, welcome to the program. Pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Love the book, and there's so much in there for everybody. And let's start with the voice in our head. Many people realize, okay, we have this voice in our head, but it's been there forever, and I'm probably not going to be able to change it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that you'll change the voice. I think that you can change the relationship to it. Right now, most of us are so unaware of the nonstop conversation we're having that it yanks us around. It's why you have your hand in the fridge when you're not hungry, or you're losing your temper when it's strategically unwise, or you're checking your email when your kid's trying to talk to you. What I think meditation can do is help you resist the terrible suggestions that the voice offers up.
You know, it's interesting because, and you talk about it in the book, you're a newsman, you're skeptical, and you hear this meditation, and you went through a whole lot of self-help discovery before you got to meditation. For many of us, that sounds like sort of new age-ish type of thing. Does it really work? And you had that same skepticism, didn't you?
Oh, totally. I mean, I was as skeptical as you could possibly be. I thought meditation was only for freaks and weirdos and hippies and people who live in a yurt, collect crystals, and are deeply into Cat Stevens and aromatherapy and ultimate frisbee. I mean, I was just completely against it. There was no way I was ever going to do it. But there are two things that changed my mind. One is that there's actually an enormous amount of science that strongly suggests that meditation has a very long list of benefits, like lowering your blood pressure, boosting your immune system, and rewiring key parts of your brain so that you have reduced stress and increased sense of well-being. And it shows up like on the brain scans. And then the second thing I learned is that meditation actually, despite its towering PR problem, doesn't require, sitting in a funny position, joining a group, paying any fees, believing in anything, or wearing special outfits. It's actually very simple brain exercise. And when I learned that, I decided to give it a shot.
It's interesting because you sort of thought the voice in my head is a good thing. It's giving me a competitive edge. I'm in television. You go back to, March of 2000, 28 years old. You're in New York City working for ABC News. You really felt that was a competitive edge. The voice at that point is sort of like giving you that drive.
Yeah, and I still think that's true. My argument isn't that we should clear our minds in some magical way, or that we should have no stress,
right,
et cetera, et cetera. If you want to do anything important, be it in your career, or as a parent, or as a volunteer, or as an artist, or whatever, there's a certain amount of stress and striving and plotting and planning involved. That's just the way it is. My argument is that we don't have to make the suffering inherent in being alive worse than it needs to be. And that meditation has really helped me draw the line between what I call constructive anguish and useless rumination. And doing that has made me happier and easier to live with.
And it's interesting because you point out in the book, it's not like when I started this meditation process that life suddenly turned around and every day is like a gift and I enjoy it to the fullest and it's all rainbows. There are still difficult times you go through. It just is an aid as you go through it.
Anybody who tells you that they've got some magic bullet and that they can turn their life into a nonstop parade of unicorns and rainbows is full of crap, and you should avoid them. And I think that these people who tell you that, you can solve all your problems with the power of positive thinking and blah, 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 that's irresponsible, and I think even dangerous sometimes. And that's not what I'm hawking here. I think that meditation is something that can improve your life, but it's not going to fix everything. However, it will give you a different relationship to your problems, so that maybe you can not suffer more than you need to, and on the flip side, that you might enjoy the good stuff rather than just racing on to the next thing.
The book is called 10% Happier, How I Tamed the Voice in My Head, Reduced Stress Without Losing My Edge, Found Self-Help That Actually Works, a True Story. ABC News' Dan Harris, our guest on the program. You're listening to This Week in America. More information at our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Yeah, you use the acronym RAIN in there, and that's sort of, talk about what that means, because these are sort of like tools you can use to get through a difficult situation.
Yeah, so this acronym is used by a lot of meditation teachers, and the point of it is how to handle difficult scenarios, like somebody cuts you off on the road while you're driving, or your boss is being mean to you, or whatever. How do you handle those in the moment? And the acronym is R is recognize, just sort of recognize what's happening, like I'm feeling angry right now. A is allow, which is just kind of once you've recognized that you're feeling anger, maybe just allow it to be there. Don't fight it. You don't have to squash it or pretend it's not there. And then I is investigate, which is actually, this is the key. Just like, maybe play this little mental game of like, what is it like when I'm angry? How is my stomach upset? Is my chest buzzing? Are my ears red? And then N is non-identification, which means like, you can recognize that the anger is just this passing thing, passing set of emotions. It's not necessarily you. It's just happening, and you don't need to get wrapped up in it. And that's the superpower here, which is that we're yanked around by our emotions all the time, and we're reacting in a blind, habitual, automatic way. And what meditation allows you to do is to have a buffer between the stimulus and your automatic reaction. And there's a cliche in the meditation world that what it allows you to do is to respond instead of react, to respond thoughtfully instead of reacting blindly. And I believe that's a kind of a superpower.
There's so much credibility in the book 10% Happier, because you go back and you mentioned this before, you find there's science involved in this, and you call it what meditation is going to be the new caffeine, and this really could solve a lot of our health problems.
Yeah, I mean, I took the new caffeine was actually from an article in Wired magazine describing how meditation has really taken off in the tech world, and I love that the writer described it meditation as the new caffeine in Silicon Valley, and I do think that we are headed toward a public health revolution here. I think in the not too distant future, people will talk about mental exercise the way we currently talk about physical exercise. These things happen quickly. If you think about in the 1940s, if you told somebody you were going running, they would have said, "Who's chasing you?" And then in the ensuing decades, as a result of the science, now there are gyms on every corner, and all of us either exercise or feel guilty if we don't. And I think that's where we're heading towards with meditation, because the science shows that it's really good for you.
And you're saying it's not necessarily mystical, it's not necessarily spiritual, it's science-based, and it works.
Yeah, I mean, due to a poverty of language, there really aren't many other words other than spiritual and mystical to describe this arena of life. But I'm not personally too terribly happy with those words, because I think they have a lot of kind of embarrassing connotations. This is science-based exercise for your mind is the right way to think about it. It's kind of like a bicep curl for your brain. And what's really radical here is the notion that happiness doesn't have to depend on external circumstances. That happiness can actually be a skill that you train, just like you train your bicep in the gym. And that's a really liberating and empowering notion.
The book is called 10% Happier, How I Tamed the Voice in My Head, Reduced Stress Without Losing My Edge and Found Self-Help That Actually Works, a true story by Dan Harris. Let's go back to The Meltdown. This is June 7th, 2004. You're in the set of Good Morning America. You're filling in for Robin Roberts. You're reading the news. Very simple, 6 voiceovers that day. A little over 5 million people watching. And you struggled through that, and everyone was really concerned about your health at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I was doing this job that I had done many times before, just anchoring the news, and my heart started racing, my palms were sweating, my mouth dried up, my lungs seized up, I just couldn't breathe, and I had to quit right in the middle, rather lamely and very embarrassingly, and at the time, it wasn't as bad as Albert Brooks on broadcast news or anything like that. So, it wasn't like everybody knew what had happened. It was, I think, more confusing to people than anything. And frankly, I just wasn't very honest when people asked me what went wrong. I didn't admit I had had a panic attack. I just kind of brushed it off. And, an hour later, I came on the show and did another newscast and was totally fine. So it kind of got, for lack of a better phrase, I got away with it. But the truth is that it was not only a panic attack, but it was also the result of some toweringly stupid decision-making in my personal life. I had gone overseas and covered a lot of war zones after 9/11, including Iraq and Afghanistan and Pakistan and Israel and the West Bank. And when I came home from a particularly long stretch in Iraq, I got depressed, and I blindly sort of self-medicated with recreational drugs, including cocaine. And when I went to see a doctor about the panic attack, he told me that even though I had only been doing the drugs sort of for a short period of time and rather intermittently, it was enough to raise the level of adrenaline in my brain and produce this panic attack. And so that was really kind of the start of this whole weird journey.
Well, it's interesting because after that initial panic attack, and I guess you had a couple more, but you were able to cover over those, your mom calls, and sometimes it takes mom to cut through everything, and she was pretty point blank about the drugs.
Well, my mom knew it was a panic attack. She did not know it was drugs. And I actually didn't tell her about the drugs until shortly before the book came out. So that was a bit of a shock for her. But she knew it was a panic attack, and unlike everybody else who was kind of confused about it, like my mom knew exactly what had happened, and she connected me with a doctor. So she really played my mom is a doctor. I have a lot of respect for her, and so she played a key role in helping me figure this out. But I want to be clear: it's not like I had this panic attack, figured out that it was the result of a drug problem, and then immediately started meditating, which solved all of my problems. That's not what happened. It was actually stranger than that. Is that I went to this doctor, and then I stopped doing drugs because he pointed out that they were probably going to ruin my career. And then I decided to see this doctor for a long time who really helped me out. And it was only years later that I found meditation as a result of having been assigned by my boss, Peter Jennings, to cover faith and spirituality for ABC News. And that was what led me ultimately to meditation.
And you resisted that. You really didn't want that beat. When he called you in, it's very graphic in the book, 10% Happier, called you in to tell you this, that really wasn't the beat you wanted.
No. I mean, my parents are doctors, scientists. I was raised in the People's Republic of Massachusetts. I did have a bar mitzvah, but only for the money. And I was not religiously inclined in any way. But the beat turned out to be a really good thing for me because I was frankly quite ignorant, and I learned a lot. I made a lot of good friends. I developed a real respect for people of faith and for the value of having a worldview that transcends your own narrow interests. And, even though none of that material really, I didn't adopt any of the faiths I encountered, without that, I don't think I ever would have stumbled upon meditation.
You talk about the Buddhist and their secret sauce is mindfulness. What is mindfulness?
Mindfulness is the ability to see what's going on in your head at any given moment without getting carried away by it. I'll say it again because I just think it's such a key. Mindfulness is kind of a boring word, but the consequences of it are huge, which is, again, the ability to notice what's happening in your mind at any given moment without taking the bait and being yanked around by it. And, think about the opposite of mindfulness, which is mindlessness. That, the panic attack was the product of unbridled mindlessness, where I went to war zones without thinking about the consequences. I came home, got depressed, didn't even really know I was depressed, and then blindly self-medicated with recreational drugs. And so I tell that story as like a case study in mindlessness, and mindfulness is the antidote. It's just the ability to actually have some level of self-awareness so that you're not constantly yanked around by the malevolent puppeteer of your ego and your impulses and your urges. And that's not to say that you shouldn't have thoughts or urges or wants or desires. It's that you should just have a relationship to them that isn't that is a little bit more sane.
And you sort of refer to it as sort of like picture-in-picture on a television. You're seeing the big picture, and you're also seeing another picture in there.
Yeah, because right now, most of us are so entranced with this nonstop conversation we're having with ourselves that we don't even know what's happening. Like, your thought processes, they take up the whole screen. But mindfulness is kind of like pressing the picture-in-picture button, where all of a sudden all these things you're thinking and feeling and wanting or not wanting, they are taking place within a larger. You see them with some context and perspective, and they don't seem so all powerful and all knowing. And I just think that shift, that slight shift in perception, can just give you a huge advantage in life. It can help you make calmer, less emotional decisions. It can help you stop snapping at people and then paying for it later. Again, it's not going to solve all of your problems, but it's a pretty big deal.
10% Happier is the book. About a minute left in the program. Our guest is ABC News' Dan Harris, author of the book. You say at the end of the book, widening my circle of concern beyond my own crap has made me much happier. Boy, we all could remember that and benefit from it.
Yeah, I mean, another part of what meditation does for you is it makes you nicer. It shows up on the brain scans. The part of the brain associated with compassion and empathy grows. The gray matter literally grows. And now, having said that, if my wife were on the phone right now, she'd give you the 90% still a moron speech. So it's not going to make you perfect, but it does make you nicer, and that makes you happier.
You said that not sure if you can be 100% happier. If that's achievable, I can definitely be more than 10%, and I'm excited to try. The book has been out for a few months now. Where are you, about 12% happier now?
Yeah. My view, obviously, it is absurd to try to quantify happiness. The title is a bit of a joke, but playing along with the joke for a second, I kind of think that the 10% compounds annually, and that your baseline level of happiness over time, if you're a consistent meditator, will just go up. Not in any magical way, no string music or white light or anything like that. It's just that you get better at not making the bad stuff worse than it needs to be, and enjoying the good stuff while it lasts. And just that habit of mind over time, it just improves your life inexorably, and I highly recommend it.
The book is called 10% Happier, How I Tamed the Voice in My Head, Reduced Stress Without Losing My Edge, and Found Self-Help That Actually Works, a true story. Our guest has been Dan Harris. Might add that in the book it's all science, so much science in there that it's not mystical anymore. It really makes sense and it works. Dan, thank you so much for joining us on the program. I love the book and thank you for sharing it with us.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for your thoughtful questions. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're listening to This Week in America, website thisweekinamerica.us.